Welcome to AI Podcast, your podcast for real estate resources and independent living strategies for the disability community. Today, in this episode, we will be talking about what a home office may look like and the connections of the American with Disabilities Act. But please make sure you stay to the very end for additional resources and potential giveaways. Hi, I'm Angela Fox, your host for AI Podcast, blogger, author, and entrepreneur for the disabled home buyer. Why? Because accessibility is home. So, the month of July is the 31st anniversary of the passing of the original Americans with Disabilities Act. July 26th is considered a second Independence Day for 1 out of 5 people with disabilities in the United States alone. Despite the ADA literally freedom for most of us, it may surprise many to hear that it has very little impact on housing for the disability community. And I've spoken quite a bit about this. In the ADA, it only applies when accessible, nothing to do with affordable, but accessible housing is required if the housing is open to the public or federal or state money is used to build the housing. So another way of looking or thinking about this is that houses that get remodeled, i.e. already in existence, or new home developments do not have to be accessible because those are the ones primarily in the private sector not using federal funds or state funds. Kind of shocking. So why am I talking about the ADA celebration on this podcast that technically it's about disability home ownership? Well, one of the biggest freedom provided is the right of employment free of discrimination, right? That an employer can't say, no, I don't like you, I don't want to hire you because you're disabled. And that actually tends to get overlooked when we're talking about what the ADA can do in employment. What is discussed often, which is another thing that the ADA does, is not just say, I'm not going to hire you because you're in a wheelchair. It also says that you are allowed an accommodation. Yes, I am a lawyer. I do have some experience in this particular field, but I'm not here to give you advice. So, legal advice. So don't take this and run with it because it really is specific to the actual disability and the type of business throughout this podcast and any other episodes. But what I can say is that you are, generally speaking, allowed an accommodation. And with the COVID, as we kind of saw it coming back to work, although in my opinion, especially down in the South at the time of this podcast, it has very low vaccination rates for the COVID vaccine. But 2020, let's look at what 2020 happened and why I'm kind of talking about ADA, besides it being a cool celebration, and employment. Well, before the pandemic, I should say, only Fortune 500 companies, generally speaking, and the federal government really embraced this idea of work from home. There was a general disbelief that employees, especially the disabled ones, could not do their jobs. The idea is either you couldn't do your job or you are asking to do it at home because you simply don't want to do your job. That sort of, ableism was particularly on people with disabilities. But yet, all that changed through the course of the horrible COVID pandemic. Suddenly, jobs that were considered strictly labor found ways to continue for the company at home. As the U.S. is coming closer and closer to be fully vaccinated, hopefully including the South, it is said that working from home may be a permanent new normal to some degree. All right? If true, then this means that perhaps, for the first time, the ADA may have a direct link to accessible housing in the private sector, even if it only impacts one room of the home, a home office. And that's what I'm going to be talking about. That's what the title of this podcast. And that's why I thought it was appropriate to talk about, just not because of the times in which we live in the transition of coming back to work because of the COVID, but, there is that employment accommodation that may need to occur for a home office if we are continuing to do that. Now, it's important to say that the quiet part out loud and acknowledge that even with having actual success stories to showcase, ableism will not be eradicated. Employees with disabilities are still going to have to fight for the accommodation of working from home on two fronts. First, again, this is not legal advice, but I am going to summarize some knowledge. And that is, first, the ADA says that the disabled employee has a right to accommodation if it allows them to do the essential functions of the job. And it's yet to be seen with the post-epidemic is if the type of work that people suddenly were able to do at home, is that considered essential? Meaning, was that why you were hired? Was that something that was normally done as the meat or the crux of the business, whoever you're working for? Or was it something where, hey, you gotta be fluid, you gotta pivot, you gotta think of other ways to generate revenue? And that's something that I don't know. I don't have the answer to. And obviously, it's going to be very specific to the type of business. So just because you are doing something at home now and you're making money for the business, well, it may have been something as an add-on just to produce revenue, and they may want to go back to the old business because maybe it produced more, or maybe they didn't like what the business was heading in the COVID era. So keep that in mind. And the second part of this, as I said, your employer also needs to make your home office accessible, whether it's for 1 or 2 days or otherwise. However, there may be something that they could go back on. And if they had already done this during the COVID era, which I would be very surprised if they had not, and that is this whole idea of financial hardship. So what do I mean? Well, generally speaking, you have to say, hey, this is the essential function of the job. I have, this kind of addition that, substantially affects what we call a life activity. Please talk to a lawyer to get more descriptive than that. I don't want to bore the people listening. But you basically have to, showcase that you are disabled and that you need this particular thing in order to do the essential function of the job. Great. That's the first half. But because, you're dealing with all kinds of employers outside of having 15 or more, is that the fact is that maybe what you are asking is too costly. Now, I have worked in the federal sector. So luckily for me, we had, as I said earlier, already incorporated working from home. So I was just a full-time home, working from home instead of 2-3 days out of the week. And, the federal government, well, they literally produce the money, right? One way to either print it or they get from taxes. And for them to say, no, Angie, I'm sorry, we can't ship you the computer. No, Angie, I'm sorry, we can't buy you, a wheelchair accessible desk to be placed in your own home. We can't afford that. That is highly not going to happen unless it's an itty-bitty federal agency, which I can't think of anything off the top of my head. However, in the private sector, that may be the case. Meaning, your employer could say, hey, this is too much of a financial burden, either by the fact that they have to purchase the equipment, or something like, well, you're really asking, to kind of rearrange what you do for work, and that's going to have a cascade effect, and it's going to cost me more. Again, that's very specific to the type of business. I'm just telling you that, just because you're able to work from home now, and maybe your employer did, I highly doubt it, but maybe your employer did in fact say, oh yeah, we'll send you an accessible desk, no big deal. It's been 6 months and, things are absolutely crazy, but it's not yours. You don't get to, sell it off and you need to give it back. Your employer might have done that. I don't think they did. I think it was just you make do, right? You make do, and that way you can keep your job. Even though you had a right, if you fit the criteria, to ask for that. And so if they didn't do that while you're at home underneath the pandemic, I don't know, even if they are offering working from home for other employees, or you do raise an accommodation, if in fact they will now, say, hey, yeah, we'll cough up the money. Okay. So that's kind of one thing I want to bring everybody's attention, because there's a lot of talk within the disability community. It's actually very controversial. So, some people in the disability community say, okay, we really don't need to be enforcing this work from home, because this is the idea of we are being, isolated. We have already been stuck at home. We haven't been able to get any of our services to our house. Our family can't come. And if we continue down this path of saying, yes, we want that as our number one accommodation, we might have just given away all the progress we have by trying to insist that we can't go to work, we can't be integrated and not stuck at home. I fully understand that. I'm not necessarily advocating one way or the other, but I am not seeing, and maybe it's because of that fear, I really haven't seen a whole lot of the disability community showcasing that there is more of a link with the ADA and through the employment with housing. I'm always obviously advocating for accessibility in a home and disability home ownership. So that's really why I am focusing on that. But I'm very well conscious of the fact that we have to be very careful as a disability community whether or not we are going to push hard on working from home full time. Okay, because it is something very touchy and unique being disabled. But I will have to say, when a lot of people are working from home and things along that nature, especially those who may have kind of jobs that are out and about, and it's a very psychological concern for a lot of people. It's like, oh my God, this is day number 55, and I haven't seen, I haven't gone out, I haven't done anything. I used to hate Billy Bob the worker, but man, I would love to get in an argument instead of just watching YouTube every day, right? I need to get back out. And a lot of the disability community, we just kind of laugh because we're like, listen, our homes are the only piece of land that we can really make accessible. The moment we go out, you never know what you're going to get if you have a severe disability, right? You really don't know. You don't know what stalls are going to be accessible. And, oh, by the way, a fun treat when I was able to go out with a mask after being vaccinated, but I was still trying to be cautious. But I did venture out and to try to find a restroom that was still open. And then, of course, okay, it's that one handicapped stall going to be open. So it is really, a nightmare in a lot of ways going out and about. And so the disability community, I think we really just kind of laugh and chuckle because we're like, yeah, we've got everything in our home. Like, anything that we need, we're good. It's accessible. Chances are, if you're super on top of things, you understand the power of Amazon delivery, groceries delivery, things like that. That way, we had it made, right? Because that's the only part of the world that we could say, okay, we're not going to have any accessibility issues. So it was, I think, I saw a lot of funny things going out. It's a missed opportunity. Everybody else, the able-bodied community, you're slowing down, but you need to actually look at us and see what we have done because, you never know if you're going to be in a situation. And, after 6 months, you would think that they would have kind of reached out, be like, how do you all do that? But that really didn't happen. So we just kind of sat back and just, laughed a little bit when we could. The only issue was, of course, getting any long-term care that may be needed. So why else would you want to have a home office? I mean, obviously to have it if you have a specific job that you could do from home. And now a quick break from our sponsor. So as you can see and also hearing me, I am sitting on my back deck and I have my grill. I love being out in my back deck. I hate when I forget something and I have to wheel back into the house, particularly my cell phone. However, I'm excited to announce that another disabled-owned business, Cush Pocket, has come up with a solution by creating this fabulous wheelchair bag. I love this bag and have been a proud customer since almost the very beginning. Why do I like it? One, it's huge. Two, it comes in multiple colors. But 3, you can put it anywhere on the base of your wheelchair. How does that happen? It's attached to the slab and it has little Velcro. You put it directly underneath your cushion of your wheelchair. And the Velcro and the weight of your body ensures that this fabulous cush pocket bag, it certainly will not move. I personally have 2 directly in front of me and it hides behind my legs, and I love that because it's so much more convenient. Trust me, you will never forget anything ever again. So as you can see down below, I have a direct link for Cush Pocket, and if you use my code Angela Fox, you will get $1 off. And not only will you get a fabulous bag, but you'll also support 2 disabled-owned businesses, Cush Pocket and my business, Horizontal Houses. Check it out. But, again, I'm not, giving any technical advice here. But having a home office provides the flexibility that you may need because of your disability and to have a better work-life balance. I mean, going into work may be hard for you on a daily basis, or your home, and again, your home will always be accessible. It also can be very lucrative for you financially. And I don't just mean like, okay, I got this job and fantastic, my employer will allow me to work from home. But I had a job for 4 years. I had a 2-hour one-way commute. 2 hours. Those of you who've been following, I'm in a wheelchair. I can drive. I hate driving. Traffic is it's nightmare. And so I would literally have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and to try to beat the rush hour traffic and literally get home at 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Every day. It was brutal. It was brutal. I was able to work one day from home, but it was brutal. And so after 4 years, I had to start taking more. It wears on your body, and so I had to start taking more medicine than I normally do. So there's that financial piece. But also, if you work from home, there are tax incentives that you could take advantage of. I am not, again, a CPA accountant, but I do know that any furniture or office supplies that you bought can be deducted, which is pretty cool. So in theory, you could totally remodel a particular room to be a home office, and it's all tax deductible. I also understand that it may be possible to deduct costs of like utilities, like electricity and the internet, and that's based on like some kind of ratio that I honestly don't understand. But I would definitely advise you to talk to your tax accountant. I think it has something to do with how many hours and space and proportionate to your house. I don't know, voodoo economics. But the point is that in theory, maybe some of the electricity and the internet could also be a tax write-off. But more importantly, you may find a need to step out on your own. That great entrepreneurship, right? I honestly don't feel, and maybe it's just my little world, but I don't feel that the disability community has been really looked at as entrepreneurs. And my God, if you have a severe disability and you've had it for a decade or more, and you're able to do everything that you want, whether you own your own business or not, you have that fire and that skill set that fucking entrepreneur has to start a business, okay? Because it is tough going out in the world. There are things like, for crying out loud, if you're in a wheelchair, you can't even take Uber. You can't even take Uber. No, I mean, unless even when California is suing Uber to make things more accessible, and Uber's like, okay, yeah, we'll get on it. We'll try to buy some vehicles that can be wheelchair accessible, and but we'll do the training that you can't discriminate and not pick up blind people or let the dogs in. We'll do that first. So I mean, you can't even take Uber for most of us if you're in a wheelchair, or even with assisted dog. It's a nightmare. So it is an adventure, and so if you're able to be totally functional and happy, you have the skill sets as an entrepreneur. And so the million things you have to do that. I mean, trust me, I saw this podcast trying to be my entrepreneur, a consulting business as well, and book, but it was so much easier when it was like, okay, I have an office, right? I have an office at home. I have my desk. I've got my computer. I even have headphones. The only thing I need to buy was a microphone. It's always easy to have that great big idea, but sometimes you just need to create the environment in which you can brainstorm and can actually immediately start working on, and not fiddle fart around with like, okay, I need to find a quiet space to think and whatnot. While the tax incentives that I just talked about, I really do think that being disabled, I mean, we really should be at the top of the food chain for entrepreneurs. I mean, another way of saying it is, everybody always says necessity brings invention, right? Well, everything's a necessity for us. So, and we always have to do it in a different way. So, I really hope that if nothing else, even if you don't have a job, that you'll be able to stay at home, or maybe you don't want to. That's cool. I really do hope that you make a home office and find something, because I believe in every person who's disabled that can do something, that next big thing, right? That has nothing to do with this. There's a tendency to say like, oh, it's got to be for the disability community. No, not at all. We say that for women. We don't say that for African Americans. So I really think everybody should have a home office. And another thing I think is imprudent, since we're talking about entrepreneurship and things of that nature, quickly, and then I'll get into what you need, what is an accessible home office, right? I've been talking about this the whole time, but how do you set one up? I mean, I think most of us could figure it out, but I mean, that's what I want to talk to you all about. Because I've been working again for the federal government, and it is a riot. Every time I go to a new job, so I like to hop around from one agency to another, it's pretty amazing that they don't have a clue how to make a cubicle accessible. They really do not. It always gets mucked up. It always has to go through 5 layers. It's just a nightmare. So what things you might want to put into your home to make it accessible in your home office. So, but before that, going back to the entrepreneurship, one thing I really wish that the ADA, so the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, got amended in 2010, and I will bore you about how wonderful it was that it got amended, because that would just get all legal geeky on you. But it's very heart-wrenching to see that with the small business agency or small business loans, those are loans that the federal government does to help entrepreneurship of certain minorities have low interest or no interest loans to get their business going. While most private financial banks would either not look at them because they don't have a collateral, or maybe they will give them a very higher interest rate. The small business agency gives out these loans. Here's a fun fact, everyone. Being disabled is not part of it. Yes, you heard me right. The largest minority in the United States, pretty much the world, is saying that, sorry, we're not going, you don't count. You don't count. If you're a disabled vet, yeah, you could potentially do that. But if you did not serve and you happen to be, like I have a very good friend of mine, lawyer, but he's white and he was blind at a very early age, and he can't get a small business loan through the federal government because this being blind, being disabled. Now there are some other resources for blind, but let's say he was in a wheelchair like me, right? Let's say he was in a wheelchair. Then you know what? He could get a small business loan for the federal government through the SBA. Now I, as a woman, guess what? Women are counted. So one thing I really wish that the ADA, when it did get amended, since it does focus on employment. And, I mean, we're not really looking to add a new category, like to add, like, well, I would love to see, private housing has to be fully accessible, or I would even love to see that in the Fair Housing Act. I mean, it has a little bit more meat to that, but not this significant. And you can listen to last year's ADA celebration. I talk about that quite extensively. Last year was the 30th anniversary, but I really hope that when they amended the ADA in 2010, that they would have said, okay, part of the employment process is the financial piece and getting loans, and banks need to, when they are looking into giving out loans for diversity, they need to include people with disabilities. And oh, by the way, small business agency, you're actually a federal government agency, yeah, you need to add them. I really wish they would have done that. While I've been preaching and rambling for a while about, entrepreneurship, I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. Enough with that. But what do we want when it comes to an accessible home office? Like, let's say for whatever reason you're going to be doing the stuff yourself, right? I mean that you are going to be setting up your own accessible office for whatever reason. Your employer is saying it's a hardship, you're opening up your own business, or you just want to have it in case you have the next best thing. What does that mean? Well, again, this is where you get kind of a little bit in a pickle, but the ADA, when it does apply, it does talk about the height of desks or countertops and many other items. But much, I feel, isn't really helpful when it comes to a home office. As I talk about in my published book, My Blue Front Door, on Amazon, the ADA accessible guides only provide a short range for a variety of measurements. So, for example, the ADA guide requires countertops be no higher than 36 inches, meaning it could be lower, but not higher. Well, chances are, if you've done any sort of modifications or whatever, people see a number, 36, right? It's in a guide, it's published by Department of Justice, DOJ. DOJ says 36 inches. Well, guess what? They're going to put it at 36, even if it could be lower, even if it's at least 36. The issue is what happens if 36 inches doesn't work for you, right? Why, what happens if you need something lower or you need something higher because of your wheelchair? I can't tell you, it was a brand new day for me when I got my electric wheelchair that had a lift. For those of you who've been around with multiple electric wheelchairs and even remember when they really didn't have any children electric wheelchairs, that was fun. And so you thought, wow, I'm getting something that finally fits me because I'm not a kid, I'm not a full-grown woman. But then you get one that actually lifts up. But the caveat is could you afford it? And I was very fortunate I could. And when I did, being able to raise up those 6 inches back, 20 years ago, it was a brand new day. Brand new day, because it always seemed like everything was just, either I could reach it with a lot of strain or just out of reach by 3 or 4 inches. And over the years, wheelchairs being lifted higher, it may not be, a big deal. But if you are in a manual wheelchair, maybe that 36 is too high. And so the ADA doesn't really help when it comes to tailoring or really making things to fit the individual. Instead, it just looks at a range of disabilities. Like what is the average height of a wheelchair or something like that. So boom, we're going to put it at 36 inches. So that's why, and again, you could do that. You could look at the ADA guide and look at how they have, lighting mounted, and how high you should have your countertops or desks, and you could certainly apply that to your office. Great. But I think it's a really missed opportunity because it's your home. So why are you going to strain in your own house or bump your knee or whatever the case may be? That's why I really don't think the ADA guide is really all that functional for this. So the ADA guide is gone. Boom. Okay. What do we use? Well, I don't know. I do know that I originally had started to do this podcast and I really wanted to research, companies that, sold at least accessible like desks and things like that. I was surprised, and I've talked about this in, my podcast and I think also in my book. And anytime you look for something that is quote unquote ADA compliant, which by the way doesn't necessarily mean it is. I mean, it's kind of one of those I mean, how can somebody be ADA compliant if the ADA guide doesn't talk about like lamps on the desk? It doesn't talk about lamps on the desk. It talks about lighting on the walls. It doesn't talk about lamps on the desk. You'll see it, right? You'll see ADA compliance. So, assuming it is, and you find something, I always find that when you find something that says ADA compliant, magically it is far more expensive. I mean, far more expensive, even if it has nothing to do with being a medical device. And that's really how this whole thing started. I call this the blue and white tax. The handicap sign being blue and white. I call it the blue and white tax. It's very similar to the idea of a pink tax, where tampons are taxed, but condoms are not, or shampoo, which has almost the exact same ingredients, but it's in a pink bottle, is somehow more expensive than a bottle for guys with the same ingredients that have to be all black or something. But there literally is a range of feminine products that have a tax on where male products do not. Okay? And so that is a real thing. It's called the pink tax. Well, I believe we have the blue and white tax, or the blue and white inflation. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. Because they all started out with most of the stuff back, I don't know when, 20 years ago. The only thing that was tailored was basically medical devices, like wheelchairs and crutches and things on that nature, right? Things that are used for a medical reason, right? And so they said, we have to get through FDA review, there might be liability, blah, 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 blah. So we have higher overhead. Well, okay, we could maybe say that for wheelchairs, although I still can't get anybody to tell me why my electric wheelchair, with all the cars that we do, iPhones, can someone please, I would like to know, if anybody's out there, could someone literally tell me why my wheelchair is $28,000 without insurance? I would really like to know that. I really would like to know that, because my father is a mechanical electrical engineer, and he can tell me specifically the parts and everything like that are within this. And wheelchairs have been around long enough where it's not like you're the one that invented the damn thing, right? So, I always tell people wheelchairs are like cell phones. They never seem, they may get improved, but they never seem to go down in price. Never. Going back to the home office and looking for ADA compliant, I looked at desks, and my God, they were expensive. And I looked down, and I'm like, okay, there's nothing special about that desk. I mean, the desk that's supposed to say like ADA compliant for wheelchairs, it doesn't, to me, if you are in an electric wheelchair, unless you have your joystick that can swivel out of the way, which most of us do, but let's say you don't. Let's say you don't have one, and it sticks out a few inches beyond, maybe at your knees. Well, you want to wheel as close as you can, where the desk will be close to your tummy, right? Well, you can't do that if your joystick of your wheelchair is either not swiveled away out of the way, or the desk has a little cut in, then you can line your wheelchair up, and, the joystick can kind of just slide right in there. I mean, if you're going to say it is an ADA compliant, best used for people who are in wheelchairs, you don't have that. I don't know why I need that. I don't know why I need to spend $800 or $500 for something that it's not even like artist designed, elementary looking, right? I was really hoping to have a list of companies here to talk to you about. So what I'm going to tell you is it's whatever you really need. And I realized, okay, I'm falling in that trap. I'm falling down that rabbit hole of I need something that's written for me as a disabled person and designed for me as a disabled person. Well, in most cases, that doesn't happen, right? So I slapped my hand and said, this is really not. So let's take a step back and talk about, when I work from home every day, what do I need? That's what I'm going to tell you about. Obviously, you need to find out where you're going to put your home office, right? Kind of an obvious step. It could take you 2.2 seconds to figure it out, but, want to make sure we're all on the same page. especially if you're kind of new. I'm going to be speaking primarily from people who have physical mobility issues or people who may have some visual impairment. I do know that when it comes to, autism and things of that nature, sound is a big deal. And so where your home office is within a home might be a big deal for sound. Where should you put your home office? Well, you can put it anywhere you can, but fundamentally, it's great if you can come up with an actual room. It just makes things a whole lot easier. It has to be uncluttered and also unobstructed pathway to get to move around, right? So if you have just junk in your room, get it out of there. You don't have to necessarily put it in a room. You could find a corner of an open space, like a living room or a bedroom, to create your office station. As long as you feel you can concentrate and you can easily get to it without tripping over things. And I could come up with some ideas, but I would recommend that you all go to Wheel Chick Home. So it's Wheel Chick Home, and I will have the direct link on my website. And this is for creative interior ideas. It's my favorite blog. So it's a woman. She's in a wheelchair, and she's won a lot of awards for a blog, and she literally does interior design for the disabled community. I mean, I think that's fantastic. And so she talks about ways where, like, maybe if you have stairs going up, maybe underneath the stairs, if there's space, you can put like a plywood and nail it from from the back of the stairs to the wall. But the reason why I like it, it's not just it's creative, but she does it from a way it looks chic, right? That is what a big, I think, thing that we are missing within the disability community, and I get it, is that we tend to just like, can we just get it done, right? Can we just get it done? And so we end up doing things to our home while maybe functional for your house. It looks like, like a bomb went off, right? Or it looks like it's tacky. And for many of you, that may not be a big deal, or you just don't have the headspace. But part of the reason why people don't want to make their home accessible, like, really think about it in the future, be like, hey, I want to stay in my home, which I really hope with the COVID, senior citizens are really realizing, nursing homes are kind of a death trap, which we all knew as a disability community, by the way, because there are lots of people who are disabled have to go in nursing homes to get long-term around clock care, usually. Even President Biden just the other week said that we need to provide more long-term care at home, that it is more economically sound. The society will save on medical costs by not putting people in nursing homes. I mean, that's the whole reason why the Disability Integration Act, which has not passed, was trying to get that pushed through. We as a disability community has always known that you should not just live in your house until you have to go in a nursing home. You should have an age in place, accessible home for all ages, however you want to call it. It's all the damn same thing, all right? It's just marketing. And the reason why marketing is so important is because if you say accessible housing, people tend to think, the able-bodied people tend to think that, oh my god, I can't use it, one, or if I can use the accessibility, it's probably going to lower the value of the home. Why? Well, they see, I mean, come on, my disability community, I love you, but they see these janky ass ramps made out 5 different pieces, plywood, duct tape, whatever. It looks gaudy, right? And there's something to be said about location as the number one aspect of the value of your home or what's marketable. But outside of location, it's what it looks like. Okay? It's what it looks like. I mean, those are the two things that people instantaneously. Then they start looking into how many bedrooms and square footage. So when you are doing accessibility in your own home, try to make it look nice. And that's what the Wheel Chic Home is all about for interior design. And she's one of the few that are doing this. So I really recommend, if you want to figure out where can I put a home office at and how can I do it in style, please go there. I love it. I love it. Love it. Hopefully, I can get her one of these times on the actual podcast here. But she probably doesn't even know who I am. What else do we need to do? Let's go into things that you might want to put in your office. And that is, let's start with the flooring. Well, you may have carpet, and well, there's nothing I can do about that. You've got carpet, you'll have to deal with that and clean it up and things of that nature. If you have hardwood floors like I do, which I think it's a must, Being in a wheelchair, carpet's evil. But you might be tempted for an office to put a rug down. Well, I have tried over 20 years, multiple times, and a variety of glues and tape, and eventually the rug does move and bunches up, and then can get, caught in my wheel. I mean, you just can't do a rug. So, I mean, that's fine. If you want to try to do the rug thing, to make it stylish, by all means do that. And if you find something where you're like, girl, I'm in an electric wheelchair and this stuff works. It prevents the rug from moving around. I use it. I'm on the rug back and forth all the time. Please reach out because I want to try it. I want to try it. So my advice is don't do the rug, even though that's kind of a popular thing in an office, but each its own. The next thing you might want to think about is obviously lighting. While it's good to have good overhead lighting, changing the lighting fixture to something better can be pricey. It can be maybe impossible to do it yourself. So instead, focus on desk and floor lamps as the more frugal and accessible lighting. And again, the ADA doesn't really provide much in the way of this. Ironically, I went to Wayfair and I have the direct link, and Wayfair says that they do have ADA compliant, whatever that means, lamps, and a few other places as well. But for lighting, there's a couple things you might want to look into. If you need LED lighting, which is supposed to help with depression or those who have seasonal change issues. It's supposed to be more of a natural light, so you want to look for LED lighting. I particularly don't like LED lighting. I don't think it's as bright, but we're going green in the world, so it's hard not to find it now. Another thing for the lamp is I always try to get a touch one. One that you could just touch because it's so much easier than trying to fiddle far around turning the thing off and on. If you don't, and you have any issues like arthritis or something in your hand, and, using your fingers is a challenge for whatever reason, you want something that's a push button. Wayfair did have that. Even better, finding a lamp that is Wi-Fi and plugging it to your phone is probably a really good idea, simply because we have a desk. You want everything, particularly if you have back issues, where you don't have to reach. But that means you get very cluttered by you very quickly. And maybe having the lamp further out will be a better angle for you. So if you have a lamp that is Wi-Fi, then you don't have to literally climb over the desk or ask someone to turn off the lamp for you. You can do it from your own cell phone. So I'm not going to pretend that that is a good option for people who are blind, because apps generally tend not to be very compliant. If you do know of a Wi-Fi app for like a lamp that works well and you're blind, please let me know. I would love to know more about that. So those are the things you need to look at for your home office for the lighting. Now let's go for the meat and potatoes, the desk. Obviously, you're going to need a desk, even if you don't have a computer. And let's say you just you're an artist and you need to draw. I mean, you need a desk. And one thing I find with desk is, especially look at wheelchairs, is that there's a tendency where the desk doesn't have any sort of storage, meaning, sometimes you have like shelving underneath the desk, or you have a spot for your keyboard. And I get why, right? Because for the keyboard underneath the desk, Well, the problem with that is that's going to hit your knee. I mean, you can't swivel it. Even if you swivel it up and everything like that, it's still going to be a problem. I've tried a million times. I guess there might be a fear that, having shelving underneath the desk, you will run into it with your wheelchair. But so basically, it becomes just a slab of a desk, and nothing fancy about it, and that's fine. But one thing you should be mindful of is that it's not just the height, which a lot of people tend to focus on. It makes sense, right? Because if it's too tall, you can't look down when you're writing or typing. If it's too low, you can't wheel under. So height of a desk is really important. And that 36 rule is a good rule to kind of go on, but I, again, highly recommend you measure yourself. I mean, literally, I have like 5 million different tape measures. I mean, I was very fortunate. I was raised with an electrical and mechanical engineer as a father, but I think he would probably disown me if I didn't have a tape measure, a light, a screwdriver, and duct tape, okay? And zip ties. So those are like, the staples. And so I would highly recommend you measure. That way you know what the height needs to be. But the other thing you need to look at is the width of the desk. I don't like to have a wide or deep, however you want to call it, desk, because if something gets pushed all the way in the back, which Murphy's Law always will, climb on top of the desk to reach it, or have my little grabby things and pull it back for whatever reason. It's just a pain. It is a pain. You kind of want something only maybe 3 feet, 3.5 feet wide is a good point. But then you get issues of when you're looking at desks in that range, which are a little bit harder to find. They tend to be small. So I have a small desk. Now, granted, I don't have a big office. I don't have a big house. So it kind of works out for me. But just be mindful that when you do that, when you're looking for it not to be wide, it's going to be kind of a small desk. So one thing I do recommend for a desk to give you more space is you buy two. You buy two and you put yourself in a corner of the room and you make an L shape. And there are a lot of desk options out there that are L shape. And the reason why I like that is because, if you set yourself up kind of like in the corner, you now have room on your left and on your right to put stuff down. I mean, that's why the able-bodied community started doing L-shaped desks as well. I mean, it's nice to have more counter space. So that's why I recommend, it's again, L-shaped desk, particularly one that's not too deep. Now let's go into storage. All right, I told you might be a little bit harder to find one that has storage. One thing I did find luck with is I found a desk on Amazon that has, I think, what they call, almost like floating shelves. And so I have 2 on top and 2 down below, and the desk is wide enough that I don't bump it, so you can't find it. Alternatively, oftentimes you will find something where it's like a little bench, office bench, and it has shelving underneath and wheels on it. Those things are great because they also are short enough that they can wheel underneath a desk, and you have at least 2 shelves, and then you can move it out. Now, another part of a desk that I haven't talked about, I talked about an L-shaped desk and how wide and all that other stuff and how high. One thing is that if you have the ability to stand and walk, but you still are mobility impaired and you need to sit down for quite a bit, I would highly invest in a standing desk. So that's kind of another tip is if you're looking for something that would be kind of medically focused, but not, I guess, kind of accepted by society, and therefore they can't rip you off, is the word ergonomics. An ergonomic chair you probably have heard of, right? And that's another thing you should look at. If you're not sitting in a wheelchair like I am, which, by the way, I always tell people, my wheelchair is the ultimate ergonomic chair because it was specifically designed and tailored to meet my screwed up back, right? But I would highly recommend getting an ergonomic chair Flat way, not muck it up your back as much as possible. And so you should look for ergonomic standing desk. And there's two types. One is where the desk itself, the tire, it's electrical. It raises, it goes all the way up and all the way down. Nothing wrong with that. It is a lot more pricier. Or you could get one where, and there's a couple companies out there, it literally sits on top of the desk and then you pick it up and it, it goes up high. So the reason why I kind of recommend that, it does require some pull to it, right? Some pull that you need to do, but it's all made for where you don't need to have a lot of arm strength to do it. But I recommend doing that simply because you could then take it with you, put it on another desk, and it's not nearly as costly. So those are the things you should be looking for a desk. I also talked about a chair, and for both of those items, the word ergonomic will be your friend when you are searching. It might be still a little bit more pricier than a normal, desk or a normal chair. But in this particular case, I think it's warranted because it is designed to prevent, any sort of, injury or harm from constantly sitting and, to your back. So I do recommend doing that. And that's about it when it comes to a home office. Thank you so much for listening to this episode on Accessibility is Home podcast. Now, before you leave, please write down my website at www.horizontalhouses.com. Horizontalhouses.com is your hub if you are a potential disabled home buyer, or if you have a home yourself and you need to modify it. On horizontalhouses.com, it will provide you with my blog articles with the latest news information in real estate as well as its accessibility. But more importantly than even my blog, which I think is fabulous, is a direct link to my book, My Blue Front Door. My Blue Front Door book is sold on Amazon, and it is the only book on Amazon exclusively written for the working class disabled home buyer. Yes, so if you are an individual that is working and you want to figure out how do you shop for a home, how do you work with your real estate agent, what kind of financial resources are out there that you might qualify despite having an income, or what do you do once you do have your home for modifying. All of that on My Blue Front Door book is sold on Amazon and is for any individual that might meet those qualifications. Now, before you leave, please, if you are on social media and you like this episode, please like with me, whatever you may be. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So look for Accessibility is Home, and that is my account. All that information on social media, how to contact me, is on horizontalhouses.com. And last but not least, if you are a real estate agent, a flipper, a contractor, a housing developer, or a nonprofit, or even a bank, all focused on housing, and you have no idea how to incorporate the disability community, the largest minority in the United States, please give me a call. That information is also found on horizontalhouses.com, and I'll be more than happy to introduce you to consulting opportunities where I can tell you what type of houses are more easily accessible, what do you need to put, how do you market for accessibility, as well as if you're interested in having me on as for a speaking engagement. If you have a panel or anything like that, please remember to include disabilities in that conversation for housing, even if it's not me. So please reach out at www.horizontalhouses.com. And remember, by all means, accessibility is home.